This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Line Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind the scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and in today's episode, I want to continue on with our January theme of helping you retain those feelings of optimism and a clean start, inspiration, and that confidence to create change where you need to, that we always seem to start the year off with, but that sort of dissipates as the year rolls on by. And here to help me with that today is my guest, Geneviève Retzlaff. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to our conversation today because we're essentially going to be focusing on change today. So maybe you are a listener who's in a traditional type of job and you're wishing you could escape to follow your creative passion as a full-time gig, but you're not quite sure if you're ready. Or perhaps you already have a creative hobby that you pursue as a side gig and you'd like to go full-time, but again, you're not sure if you're there yet. Or probably the most common one for a lot of you is you already have a full-time creative business and maybe it's doing really well. Or maybe you're struggling a little bit and you've got that itchy feeling deep down inside that it might be time for a change. And that's what Jen is here to help us with today. So on that note, let's get to know her a little bit better before we dive into the conversation. Geneviève is a certified transformational coach who guides individuals through a journey of self-discovery. She helps her clients uncover a career path that resonates with their authentic selves and fosters fulfillment both personally and professionally, which is basically the core principles of this podcast. So I feel like we have the right person here with us today.
That's so cool.
So before we dive right in, Jen, the first question I ask everyone who comes on the show is, did you feel like you were creative as a kid?
Well, I did not feel it as I was a kid, but looking back, I could definitely see that I was. And I say was because it feels like adulthood made me change somehow. Like it's hard for a non-creative family, I guess, to see non-creative, creative as being serious somehow. Like at least that's my experience, and I think that's why I lost touch with it. But yeah, my mom said I was always drawing, like all the time. Even if I look at my notebooks from high school, like there's scribbles all over the place. And I also had I think I have a musical ear. Like it's really easy for me to remember songs. And I had a neighbor who had a piano. And I was so interested and I wanted to learn. And she was teaching me, and I was always there. Like, so I really have a thing for piano and violin. It makes me so, like, it touches my heart, like really, like I feel the music. So in that sense, I do feel like I have this creative side in me, but was not nurtured, I would say, unfortunately.
I think we're all creative. Well, I firmly believe we are all creative
I
inside.
think so
How
too.
that manifests itself as we get older and stuff is different for everyone. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think we do lose a bit of it as we grow older. We just kind of
Yeah.
forget
So
that
sad,
it
right?
is. It
Yeah.
really is. So
Yeah.
it always makes me happy when I see people who have kind of rediscovered that part of themselves and are able to
Totally.
give it some time. So tell us a little bit about your business and what you do, because you do a couple of different things. If
That's right. That's right. I actually have kind of two businesses on two fronts because I am passionate about too many things. But no, there's one fold. I work with organizations to bring more authenticity and more connection into the work culture and help management and employees to connect on a human level, which in turn will have a ripple effect on the turnover rate and reduce the turnover rate and make people stay and engaged and in a place where resources are scarce. Like it's the side of a business that is something that I find very useful for organizations right now. And the other fold is the career coaching bit. That's how I started I started my coaching career as a career coach. And so that's where I did my certification as a transformational coach. So then I really help people get real or get clear about what does it mean to be authentic for
Mhm.
them, because what it means for me doesn't mean the same for you, right? And so what does it mean for us? And as I said, like the same way I was creative as a child and I lost it, that's like mental construct and experiences and environment and family and schools and society in general makes us shift somehow because you want to fit where in the expectations of everyone around you and you forget about your own.
Ugh.
And so and when I say, self-discovery, yeah, do you hear yourself? I
Yes,
think,
that was very
yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what I help clients with to understand, go back into that self-discovery process and deconstruct the mental constructs that are no longer serving you. Because when people come to me, they feel icky, right? They feel, something's got to change. I don't feel good. I don't feel right, but I just don't know what's next.
Mhm.
And so we uncover that. Yeah.
What was it that led you to doing this kind of work?
I was always drawn to it. I started my career in the corporate world as an HR with Cirque du Soleil. That's where
Oh, very cool.
my my creative side was fulfilled. Like I'm not a creative myself, but at least, I was surrounded by them. So that was good. So yeah, I started my career as an HR for 15 plus years before I switched on to coaching. But the part that I liked the most was really the partnering with leaders to make them see what they couldn't see,
Mm.
about people's behavior, what could be under that. And then I just figured I had an eye that a lot of people didn't have. And so I thought maybe that's something I could explore, and that those meetings with leaders to talk about people conflicts, and like this was my space, I felt really good in there and strong. And so I wanted to be you always call yourself a coach. There's so many people who said I'm a coach, but what does that really mean? And for me it meant that I could start from the premise that the client is resourceful enough to find their own solution, and so that is a specific kind of coaching, and that's what I call the transformational coaching, understanding what the client is strong in, what their values, their beliefs, what is blocking them. So just be able to explore all of it. So that went really deeper that from the leadership coaching I thought I was doing versus the actual transformational coaching is the, like, I don't know, five deeper levels. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So, as I kind of alluded to in the intro, we have three basic kinds of listeners to this show. We've got the people who are, um, they're in a traditional job already, but it's not really where they want to be, and but they're not. The idea of leaving is very scary. And then we
Yeah.
have we have those who are maybe doing it part time, but yeah, again, the idea of going full time or having to cross that line from hobby to job
Mm,
is scary. And then we have that group who are already there, but
Hmm.
maybe they've been doing it for a long time and it's just, so let's focus on the first two groups first, because you kind of alluded to it in what you were saying, that you get that icky feeling, like
Yeah.
something's off, and we've
Yeah.
all felt it. It's just like, yeah. So maybe if we could talk a little bit more about that, like how do we know when it's the right time to start exploring a change? What are some of the signs that we might?
Mm, that's a good question. I guess if you if you hear yourself think or even talk about all the negative aspects of what you do, I guess that's a good sign that you're probably not feeling fulfilled. If you go around in circles, you're like, okay, what else can I do? And then you go around in circles in your mind, and that involves a lot of either negative talk to yourself, like inner talk, or coming up with a problem to what you're trying to create. For example, if you have, I don't know, you are a creative that does visual arts, and you want to go into, I don't know, digital art. I don't know, that's not a good example, but
Writing poetry.
um,
Say you want to go
yeah,
completely.
something different, right? Yeah, thank you. um, but you're like, yeah, oh, but I could do that, but then I'm not going to make enough money. And then, well, who's going to buy this? And who am I to do that? And whatever. Like you have that idea, and then all like right away you come up with a problem.
Mm,
That's probably, you can explore. Maybe those problems are real, but maybe there's something that you're telling yourself that is not serving you, and maybe it's just a belief that once you get rid of it, you can accomplish that goal, no problem. So yeah, does that answer your
yeah,
question?
I think so, because that kind of led into what I was going to ask next, is that there's all those voices in our head that
Oh yeah, these damn horses.
like I have a real job now. I can't leave this to go do
uh
whatever I want. Or
yeah.
yeah, artists are always starving. I'll never make enough money. And it's just, how can I turn being a painter into a business? All those things. So how do we deal with those voices when they're talking to us? Because they're very loud.
I know. And you say that, and I was hearing a podcast where Bono, from the singer from U2, said that even up to when his U2 made so much money and was super successful, his dad was still asking him when he's going to get a real job. You know, like it's just so ingrained, like that's not a real job, but and so it's hard to deconstruct these kind of thoughts when that's all you hear, right? And so um, I guess, the what I would suggest, and that's the work I do, is before you get there, just stay in the space of the goal. Let's say this example, right? You want to be writing poetry. Stay in that mind space. I write poetry. And then if you practice mindfulness, like if you meditate or whatever, set an intention. Like I want to get clear on where this could take me, for example, and then visualize yourself in the world of a poetry writer, and just embody that and just see how it feels, and stay in that space for as long as you can. And
Mm,
then look at the blocks. Oh, and just don't look at the blocks while you think about your dream. Don't let that sit for longer than a minute. Do you know what I mean? And just
mhm.
sometimes I spend 3 sessions with clients just talking about goals, and that motivates, and that gives them energy towards it. It's like, oh my God, it is possible. And
Mhm.
then, oh, okay, so what's getting in your way? And then we talk about the blocks. But first of all, you stay in that space for a while, and then you get empowered by the thought and vision and whatever you let yourself be.
So it's almost like you set the goals before you address the problems that would come with the goals. Like
Always.
that's later, we'll
Yeah.
problem solve it later. So okay, so
Yeah.
that's a really great first, that is a very constructive first step that you can take, is
Yeah.
sit with it
Step
and then
one, check.
actually, yes, create the goals that you would need to put in place in order to actually become somebody who writes poetry. So maybe that means that you are going to sit down at your desk every day for 10 minutes and write something. Like that could be a very first step. Like, let's actually write something.
Yeah, and start with something small. That's what I mean. Like it's easy to take 10 minutes and think, right? Like you don't need to quit your job or whatever just this minute. Just take a first step towards at least just feeling how that would feel. And that's manageable enough, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've always worked for somebody else, and so you've always had somebody who's taken care of your paycheck and who has dealt with taxes and hired the people around you that work around you and done all that for you. It's one thing to say, I want to write poetry and I want to earn my living from it. It's a very different thing to also, because at the same time you're saying, I want to start a business. I want to write
Yeah.
poetry and I want to start a business and I want them to be the same thing.
Hmm.
So not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. I think, like, how do you go about evaluating whether or not running your own business might be a good fit for you?
Yeah. The way I do it, that is part of the work I do that is more on the pragmatic side. Because there's a lot of reflection and a lot of feelings and a lot of inner work. But that part is for me the pragmatic part, which is I run a strength assessment. I use the Gallup Strength Finder. You can find any really, and you just need to be clear about your strengths. And once you're clear about your strengths, it'll tell you whether you have the strength to be an entrepreneur or whether that would suck too much energy. And the way I mean that is if your strengths, so the Gallup Finder, that Strength Finder that I use, for example, it has 1 to 34 strengths, right? So in order. And then if, I don't know, your organizational skills is number 30, it probably says that it's going to be hard for you unless you have enough financials or, enough planning or savings to be able to outsource that part, like the accounting or whatever that you're not strong in, that requires organizational skills. If you know that's not a strength, because the strength finder, what it will tell you is if you're in your top 10 all day long, you don't feel like you're working. You're
Right.
using your strength. It gives you energy. You're pumped. You wake up, you're like, yeah, you know? And but if you always use your weaknesses in your job, then that's gonna be very hard. Like you're not gonna thrive and you're gonna wonder what are you doing, really? And then you're gonna go back to this unfulfilled feeling, unfulfillment. Yeah. Um, yeah, so I would say understand your strengths and don't work on your weaknesses. Don't say, I have to work, I need to be good in accounting.
Mhm.
I don't think that's going to be sustainable, you know. It
You
can
know,
it can work for a couple of years, but at some point you're going to question it again, you know.
yes, that was my first hire when I started
I bet
my own
mine
business,
too.
was hiring an
Yeah.
accountant. I knew I was going to have to do it for the first year or two, but that was always my goal, was to make enough money to hire somebody to do my books, and then I'd worry
Oh
about the
yeah.
rest later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it
I'm
is
with you.
possible. You just have to be very realistic, I guess, about what you're
Mhm.
good at, what you're not good at. And you always hear this, you hear people talk about their superpower, and how very often when you are in that zone with your superpower, it doesn't feel like work. It feels almost like you're goofing off,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
which
It's
then,
possible. It
but
is
then
possible.
we get all these feelings of guilt around like that, like, oh, I'm goofing off. This is silly. Like I could do this in my sleep. I should be working harder and yet working harder often includes those things we're not good at. So
Yeah. That's right.
it's
Do
a
you know
lot of
what? Like
fear.
that reminds me of just somebody I just started to work with. She's a medical doctor and she is also an entrepreneur that has her own practice. And she's an ex-Olympian. And the reason why I do this, because I want to have the parallel to what you just said right now,
Mhm.
is she is so focused on performance and the way she was brought up and the way that whatever took her to success, being an Olympian is part of a big success
Mhm.
milestone, right? What took her there meant that it could not equal fun. It's like it's a dissociation that is absolutely necessary if you need to be serious about your success. You can't have fun because then it means you're kind of slacking off. And so now we're working, deconstructing this to be able to, first of all, infuse more fun in her own
Mhm.
life, but also in her practice for her employees and for, for everyone on her team. Because if this is her belief, like probably the culture that she created says that you can't have fun, and she wants
Yeah.
to change that.
I would
So
even
anyway,
think,
so
even for her patients, I would think you would have to be, I'm just, my mom's a retired physician, so
there we go.
I just, there has to be the empathy and all of that that comes with it that sometimes I think we could probably lose if we're super focused on performance.
Right.
So that's really interesting. Yeah. So this
Yeah.
person is having to just basically relearn how.
Relearn to infuse fun into her life and into her practice. But so the parallel I would say is that it is it is possible to have fun and use your strength all day long, not feel like you're working. And also, yeah, that's the second piece, I guess, the blocks that a lot of entrepreneurs have is like charging enough for your services and believing that you're worth it. That's a second layer.
Yes,
But yeah.
we talk about that a lot on this show.
Ah, yeah, there we go.
A lot. Pricing is anytime we do a pricing episode, it does well. Okay, so when we're getting ready to tackle a big career shift, so whether we're leaving traditional employment or we're taking that side gig and turning it into our full-time gig, and you kind of alluded to this in your last answer, but how important is it that what we're moving to and our mindset and everything around it fits with our own values and feels purposeful as opposed to doing something just because it's going to make us money and it will pay our bills and
Mm.
support us. So I mean, I guess it's possible to just go out there and do something that will pay you well, but how long can you sustain that if it doesn't fit with who you are, who your authentic self is?
I think it's always going to catch up with you. Like you're always going to have these thoughts of like, "Ugh, why am I doing that?" But some people are more endurance than me. For example, I left the corporate world because that was just it was paying off. It was a good job, right? Like it
Mhm.
was. But at some point, I guess I guess the point would be to really look at what are your goals and what is important. So somebody who is in a situation where they have to earn that money and don't feel like they have the luxury to make the choice, it's a
Mhm.
different story. But I would still say if you feel unfulfilled and you have to stay in that job for now, you can plan a career transition the same way you would plan a vacation. You can set money aside and say, well, when I'm going to transition into that and make a plan, it could take you 5 years instead of 5 months, but at least you can work towards that goal eventually. I think if you don't live, I truly believe that if you don't live according to your life purpose, it's always going to come back to you. No, you're not doing the right thing. And then blocks will come in your way somehow, like life will tell you you're not in the right place.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's what I did before I left my job. I was planning my exit strategy about 3 years before I actually left and doing exactly what you said. I was putting money aside. I made some big purchases that I might not be able to make afterwards. And I did
Yeah.
a little bit of, I went back to school and yeah, and I was miserable in my job, but
At
being
least you have
able
a
to,
goal, right?
yes,
You're
I was
like,
able to
there's
go
light.
go home at the end of the night and work towards something that I was more excited about and that's what kept me going. If I hadn't had that to look forward to, I really don't know what I would have done, to be quite honest. So, um, and it was
Yeah.
really funny, and I'm just going to put this out there for everyone listening because the first thing I did before I quit my job when I was thinking about it is I told my parents. I told my dad first. My parents are separated, but I told my dad first, and he was like, "Good." Like that was his first words were good. And he's like, "You should tell your mother first, though." And I called my mom, and she was like, she said, "Oh, good." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yes, I'm so glad you're doing this." And then I mentioned it to my brother and he's like, "Oh, for frick's sake, like it's about time." And I was like, "What do you mean it's about time?" He's like, "You've been miserable for years and everyone can see it." And I didn't even realize, I thought I was hiding it and I wasn't. Like it
Right.
was just like everybody close to me was like it's about time. You're ready for
Yeah.
this. You all the signs have been there and but you needed to get there on your own, I guess. So I think
What would you have said if they had told you like 3 years ago, like, why don't you quit your job?
they had always kind of hinted at it, I guess. And they knew I was on that path and that was where I was going. But um I think I just needed to get there myself.
Right.
And it was a bit of a big life thing that happened that kind of made me realize like I'm not going to like this isn't going to get better and
Mm,
life's too short and now's the time.
mm,
But I think the one thing I just want to say to everyone listening is that even if you think I don't think we realize how much of our unhappiness we can put out into the world without even realizing it. Like it was very obvious to everyone around me that I was unhappy. I thought I was hiding it. And so if you're feeling that way, there's a good
mm.
chance that everyone around you can see it,
Yeah.
and they're either trying to help you and you're not listening, or they don't know how to help you. So, but you're going to be putting off that energy to the world, I
Mm.
think. So,
It's contagious, just as happiness then is also contagious, right? Like you have a ripple effect, and that's why I find the work I do so rewarding. And
mhm.
I like to believe that if I transform the life of one person, it has a ripple effect on their lives, and then it kind of ripples like on a
Of course
bigger
it does.
level.
Yeah, just even things like, your marriage or your partner or spouse or whatever,
Yeah,
it's very hard to live with somebody who's always unhappy
yeah. Oh my God, it's so heavy, right? Yeah.
yes, especially if it's themselves they're unhappy with, not necessarily you or the family, but it's
Mm,
the unhappiness is
yeah.
inside. So yeah, if you can change that for somebody, you're changing the lives of
Mm.
everyone around them.
Yeah, but let's come back to the change is hard, and to understand your own blocks is really the key. But
Yeah.
if you only live in the blocks though, like that's gonna be hard. You need to live in the vision first, I think.
Yeah. So how do you go about having that conversation with yourself? Like where you like because I think sometimes we don't have those conversations with ourselves. We just put things away because I gotta go to work today and do this thing that I don't enjoy. Um,
Yeah,
so how do you sit down and how do you I'm not gonna
I would say
articulate what I want to say very
no, I
well here,
know
but
what you
you,
mean.
you
I
get where I'm
guess
going?
you know what? I mean I truly so my biggest belief is that we get sometimes we want to be distracted from the thoughts that we don't want to have.
Yes.
And that's harder than just and that's going to drag longer than if you just sit with that discomfort. I don't feel good, let me figure out why. So if you can't afford to hire somebody to help you with that, then just sit with those feelings. And I don't know, you can journal, whatever works for you, right? I practice mindfulness because that works for me. Some people, they go for a run or they do yoga or whatever works for you to put you in a space where you can reflect reflect like on a deeper level about what is it. And if you let yourself be in that space, I swear things will come up. But it's the distraction that will always come. And it's just like postponing the thing and it's just making it bigger, you know?
It's procrastination from dealing
Yeah.
with what's making you feel bad. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
ultimately is not healthy. I would,
Yeah.
yeah.
And imagine on all the years that you're wasting living your life purpose. You're sacrificing being happy and fulfilled
Yeah.
because you don't want to sit down in your discomfort. I mean, yeah, maybe gaining a new perspective like that could help. Or yeah,
Yeah. So sitting down and just forcing yourself to have that moment with yourself, whether it's a
yeah.
conversation or just, yeah. So I think that's very hard for a lot of people to do. And
Yeah, and sometimes some people don't know how to have that conversation. And if you have a person you trust, you can use that person as a thinking partner. You
mm,
can just say, I don't need a solution right now. I just need to ramble my thoughts because I need to get them out somehow. Or do you know what I mean? Because I know if I tell my husband I have thoughts, then he will find me a solution. I don't want a solution. I just want to be in my head for a minute, but not alone in my head.
I think that's very natural when you're a partner. You want to fix
Yeah,
your partner's problems. You want to make them
yeah,
feel better. And sometimes you just have
yeah,
to let them have their
yeah.
moment.
Feel. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I've noticed this. I'm in a mastermind group with four other female small business owners. And I always find our best solutions and uh, meetings always come out of where somebody has just needed to blah, just talk something out. They're not necessarily looking for a solution, but they just need to get it out. And usually what invariably happens is about two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through the meeting, they all of a sudden are like, the solution just presents
Oh,
itself in their
yeah.
head because they got that opportunity to just talk it out. And we just all sit there and go, yay.
Yeah.
But you need to do it in front of other people. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the other group. So the group of women out there who already run their own businesses and they're doing well. Maybe they're struggling, or maybe they're doing very well, but they're let's say for this instance that they have a successful business. It's profitable, it's successful, and now they're struggling with growth. And they know that the reason they're struggling is because they are the bottleneck. And I think this happens far more than any
I know.
business owner wants to admit. But and sometimes it's hard to admit you're the bottleneck in your business. But you realize it's time that the only way you're going to move forward is to remove yourself from
Mhm.
being the bottleneck. And usually that means hiring some help. Um, and I think this is where a lot of small business owners, very small business owners who've always just been a sole proprietorship or maybe had a VA who helps with a few tasks, get really stuck. They have no experience managing people, training people, any of that. And this is actually something I've wanted to do a full episode on for a long time, but how, what are the first steps towards bringing help into your business so that you can get things moving and growing again?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what a friend of mine said on a podcast recently. She said, and this is that resonated with me so much, and what you just said, she said, my business can grow only as much as my mental capacity can hold.
Yeah.
So I'll repeat that just to let that sink. My business can only grow as much as my mental capacity can hold. And to your point, if you don't work on growing personally, your business cannot grow. And so if you're the bottleneck, it means that maybe you think, oh, this is too much trouble, or I don't have the skills to run a team. Oh, I don't have, like, you're again like coming up with the problem before you even thought about a solution. Um, so that is something to definitely consider, like giving, like expanding yourself and your mind to the possibilities. And I'm saying that like I know what I'm talking about, but I struggle with that myself. Like it's a place where I'm still, it's uncomfortable, right? Like growing, having a big team, and like it's daunting. I get it. I really get it. But if you're able to kind of break those barriers that is keeping you stuck, then you can do so much more than you think, right? Um, so there's that. But also going about to building a team. Is that what your question is about?
Yeah, I think even saying team might be scary for some people who listen to this show to hear. Like,
People.
yes, like just the thought of hiring one person is frightening because I think you're dealing with all those emotions like this is my baby. I'm the only one who can do this.
It's hard. Control and hard
There's
to let go.
all that stuff. And just letting y'all know out there are definitely people who can do parts of your business better than you can. There just is. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess maybe like team maybe isn't the right word, but even the steps to making that very first hire, because I do think one thing that happens is once people hire the right person for the first time, they realize it's a lot easier to hire the second person and the third person.
Yeah. If the first one is a success, and that's
Yes.
where you need to put a lot of attention, because if it fails, you're going to think that that's what it is,
Yeah.
and then you can't have a team. Done. I tried it. Done. But maybe your hiring process wasn't done properly, you know.
Yes.
um so getting the right people on the bus, I guess, so that goes back to my HR world, I guess, is really understand like what you want to build as a culture, even if it's just for one person. Like you need to know the type of people you want to get on your bus. And by that, it's not only the skills, but it's also how are you going to complement each other, knowing that it's your baby and it's going to be hard to share. Have somebody who's going to be fine with that, you know, and have some really hard, non-negotiable points. Like, this is something I need. And sometimes I find like when you're in an interview and you like the person, like you connect, you're like, oh yeah, that would do. And then you start crossing off like criterias that you set for yourself, you know, just because
Mhm.
you have a personal connection. I was in, I've done that myself, and that was a fail. And I know a lot of other people who did the same, but yeah, you know, you let yourself carry away with the personal connection. But yeah, just really be clear about that. And there's different ways to recruit that are more, I don't know, they're a bit more woo, but they ensure that you create the best mix of people, and diversity is good. If somebody challenges you in an interview, you want them on board. You know, you don't want, you know, it's a different way of recruiting right now, but I don't know if I'm going in the direction of getting rid of this care. But what I want to say is that there are ways to recruit. Like, for example, if you look at human design, like if you get a bit curious around the getting the right personalities together on the team, it could really, really be empowering. And because you can really multiply and, you know, on an exponential level, your success. So if you're already successful, right, that's your example. Like
Mhm.
women that are successful, you can just really even be more successful, and you can build a lifestyle business. You can work less and make more, and, you know, try to see this as a positive thing and just get the right people on the bus. Yeah, I guess
Mhm.
that's the trick. It's not just hiring for skills and ticking boxes of a job posting, but really going beyond that first impression. Just do really due diligence, a lot of assessment, especially if it's your first one. It needs to be a success, like, because otherwise you're probably going to let that idea go, and that's a shame.
Mhm.
That would be a shame.
Do you also have to have realistic expectations around what bringing an employee on is going to be like? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that they are going to have to spend some time training that person. And it
Yeah.
would be great if we could hire somebody who just appears in our business and
Yeah.
just
Here,
learns
yeah.
everything through osmosis, and
I
five
know. Can
minutes
you not
later.
just download your brain, you know?
Exactly, but that just doesn't
Download,
happen.
upload.
So great.
um, No, I guess the two very tangible steps that I could say is, again, go back to the strength finder, see what you're strong in, and maybe leading a team is not something you're strong in. So hire somebody who can eventually do that if you grow further,
Hmm.
or just, you know, understand your own limitation, and maybe growth is going to challenge you in some of your weaknesses. Then maybe that's not the right place, because again, like, you want to use all your strength to be able to give you energy and not suck the life out of you. um, so yeah, so that's yeah, that's what I would say. Just look at your strength.
Yeah, I think one of the things in my past life I had to do hiring, so I'm fairly comfortable at it. But one of the things the first time I had to make a hire was just not understanding um, that it would take a lot of work on my part just based on the
Yeah,
way the company I worked for was organized and structured. But there has to be time set aside for training. There has to be time set aside for onboarding and orientation and those types of things, in order to set the person up that you've
yeah.
hired for success. Like, you have to have realistic expectations of
Yeah.
where they're going to, how they're going to grow into the role that you are hoping to bring them into. So
Yeah. You can see this as a one step backwards, three step forward kind of approach, you know? You
yeah,
need to
that's a
slow
really
down to go
it's a
to go
really good
faster,
way.
farther.
Because
Yeah.
I think when you
But
hire
it
your first person, it does feel like a step backwards at first because it takes up
yeah,
more of your time. And yeah, and if you're not expecting that, it can be
yeah.
disorienting.
That's right. Yeah. Have the right expectations. Oh, yeah, that's the other piece I wanted to say. Talk to other people. Talk to the entrepreneurs that you know around you that have hired a team. What was it like? What are the surprises? What are the challenges? A
Hmm.
lot of people don't talk about challenges, you know, always the face of like everything's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, ask them about the challenges. And if you don't have anyone in your network, look outside of your own network. Just,
Hmm.
you know, meet people, go, I don't know, but this is like discuss and make sure you're really clear about what you're getting yourself into, and then, you know, understand your values, your beliefs, and your strengths. Do they fit with me having a team, you know, or hiring somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very important. Yes, because once you do make that first hire and it's successful, it's life-changing.
I
It is so, it's just like, wow, what else can I get rid of? Like, just bring them on.
know.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes, and you will grow from it. Like if that's where you want to go next, that's what has to happen.
Hmm.
Um, so then we've got this other group of people they've got their established businesses. Things are going great. And but maybe the spark is gone and they really want
Mm.
to follow a different creative path. But their business is supporting them and it's something that they did love. And maybe they do have employees and there's that fear of if I make a change, it doesn't just impact me, um,
Mm.
it impacts my whole ecosystem and people whose livelihoods depend on me. And so there can be a lot of stress around that. And I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions for people who are maybe in that situation where
Mm.
they're feeling those feelings that it's time to make a change,
Right.
but they don't know how to
If
navigate it.
they have a successful business, it means they have a proven concept, right?
Mhm.
And so I would personally not think of dissolving it, but more like giving it in the hands of somebody who's passionate about it while you build your, you know, your other business that you're passionate about. I
Mhm.
guess there could be kind of a transition. That's an idea I have, but obviously not everyone would resonate with that. I would say it's really well, overcoming the guilt, I guess, you know, that's what I would imagine people would feel like if they hire people, they, you know, you get them on board with your mission, your project, and now you're saying, I don't know about that mission anymore. You could
Mhm.
disappoint people, and a lot of people have trouble living with that. And, you know, I get it. But if you can overcome the guilt and make things right for you and the team you hired, that's, you know, that's already kind of a first step. But also you can plan it the same way we said, right? Like
Mhm.
planning a vacation or something, you know, that needs to simmer and be thought through, and having a plan that makes sense, and have somebody look into that plan, not just your with your own mind, but I would totally invite um, somebody to brainstorm on the exit plan. But
Yeah.
personally, like I think I would probably go more for an exit plan, but not dissolving the business if it's already successful. You know, it's I don't know, unless
Yeah.
you really don't want to be involved with zero anymore, which is also possible. You know, you
Mhm.
can even in the hands hire a CEO, somebody who's passionate about it and who's
You
going to drive it for you.
you just mentioned the term exit plan, which I think is something most self-employed business owners do not think about when they start their businesses. I certainly know I did not. And all of a sudden, there's whether it's um, the spark is gone, it's not feeding your soul anymore, or maybe you just want to retire. Like maybe you're just, I've done
Yeah.
what I need to do and now I want to do something else. But how important is that when you're starting out to think about what the end game is?
Yeah, yeah. You're telling me this, I'm like, oh no, I need to think about that too.
None of us do. I think, and it's
Uh,
not until we get to the point where we're feeling, and I've had this happen in a past business where
mm,
this wasn't, and we didn't have an exit plan. We really didn't know what to do. And I think ultimately we wound up selling our business, but I think that was, I think if we had planned things from the get-go or had
mhm.
an idea of what the options were to leave, we would have been so much better prepared. And I think when you're not prepared, I think we found ourselves back. I don't want to say backed into a corner, but sometimes it felt like that, like we didn't have very many options because,
Mm,
and
right.
so I feel like it's something I've
Creating
definitely,
options.
yes. And I think that's something I think about a lot more now is like, where do I want to be in 10 years, 15 years, and how, especially if your business is your retirement plan, like if selling your business is,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people don't think about because in order for that to happen, somebody has to buy your business. And what if
Yeah.
nobody does?
hmm
So,
That's right. That's
yeah.
right.
Do
Uh,
you have any suggestions for people when they're getting started towards thinking about how you're going to finish it?
Yeah. I guess there would be a lot of emotions involved in that
Yeah.
decision. It's really hard to, it's like having your own business. It's like having a child. It's really hard to be objective and rational 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like having an exit plan needs a rational and objective lens. And I would say bring someone in. That would be my best advice. Don't do this on your own.
Mm.
That's where my head is going when you're asking that question. I would not do this on my own.
Yeah, actually, you just reminded me of a podcast episode I listened to several years ago. It was about two partners. They had the podcast together and the business. And I remember them talking about how not long after they started the business, they sat down with a lawyer and an accountant and created a partnership agreement where
Oh,
basically the lawyer went through and highlighted all these things. What if one of you wants to leave and the other doesn't? Or
mm-hmm.
they even kind of joked about it like, what if Oprah calls and wants you on her show, but she can only take one of you? Which one will it
Ah,
be? And they had even gone down to that level of granularity. Like, well, what if Oprah
that's
does call?
awesome.
So it was in the contract, like she gets to go and the other one gets to stay behind. And we don't think about those things when we're starting out. Like,
That
Oprah's
for
never gonna
sure. I would never think about Oprah wanting to hear about my business.
so, and they wound up being very, very successful. And eventually their partnership did um,
To solve.
dissolve, and one of them carried on with the business. Um, but it was a very, it gave me a lot to think about when I was hearing them talk.
Yeah, talking about an exit plan. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm all about formalizing these kind of things. So I think that I would have hired a lawyer also. I know it's high cost,
I
but
know.
there's such an investment that you can't regret. You can't say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that." You can't
Yes,
say that. Yeah,
it definitely, especially if you're in a partnership, even more so than if you're just on
even
your
more so.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yes, so we're coming up on the hour, and so I just
hmm
want to sort of like for all of those people that are sitting out there listening who are just in those having those moments right now where they're thinking it's time, like something is off. I'm ready to make a change. What would you suggest to them as the first few things that they should be doing right now, even if they're not sure quite what that change is going to be?
Okay, is this something easy, manageable, and a first small baby step to you understanding what it means for you to be fulfilled? Have I try to direct something. So I don't know if your listeners know Brené Brown, but I would look
I'm
her
sure they
up.
do.
Look, I'm sure they do. Everybody does, right? She's awesome. If you don't, like, just be curious about her. She's awesome. But she has on her website, I think, is it Dare to Lead? I can't remember, but on her website, you will find a list of values. and then circle your top 10 and ask yourself, why do you think those values are yours?
Mm.
Like go deeper into the reflection, asking yourself why, and then circle the top three. And because three is it's really hard to choose three values. And then you might understand where the difference, not the difference, but the sense of unfulfillment comes in. It might be because you don't live according to your values at this very minute. Um, and and then see what can you do to live your values more fully. And that will take you slowly to a path of reflection and what does it mean for you to be aligned? I guess that's the whole point. When you don't feel fulfilled, you don't live aligned, you're not aligned with your values and your belief and your strength, and all of it is kind of not in a straight line.
Yeah.
So by bringing them together, I guess that's one of the pieces of the puzzle, and to me that's the most important one, because what does it mean to live according to your values? It means to live authentically, and vice versa. And so I guess that's going to give you at least enough hints to get started on the process of feeling fulfilled in 2024. And that's a good way to start January, I find.
It
Like,
is.
okay,
It's actually a really
what are
good
my
start.
values? Yeah.
Something to revisit every year as well and just
Yeah,
make
they
sure.
change over time. Yeah, your strength won't change. Your belief can change if you
Yeah,
put your heart into it, but your values, yeah, they can change based on the experiences you gain. They
definitely.
can change, with time, with life, with everything that happens to you will make your values change.
And like you said at the beginning, I think we all know when things aren't in that straight line, when they're not aligned, because
Yeah,
we do. We feel there's just
yeah,
it's just like an icky
yeah,
feeling,
yeah,
or something's itchy, or it's just off. And
yeah,
I think we're all pretty good at knowing when something's off. Um,
yeah.
so yes. And the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap up is for those people out there who are thinking, and this is probably applies more to maybe other people who are thinking of leaving a traditional job or a corporate job, or to those who are already running a successful business who are thinking they might need change and they want somebody to help them. You are a coach. Um, one of the questions I always hear in a lot of small biz and entrepreneur groups is like, how do I find the right coach for me? So, do you have any suggestions or tips for people listening who are maybe
I'd
looking to
say
work with a coach?
talk to at least three.
Hmm.
If you can fit in more in your schedule, fit in more. See really where you connect. And you really need to connect with your coach. It
Yeah.
needs to make sense. And some coaches will want to sell you their program, and so just pay attention. Like, are you being influenced, or do you just feel a very strong connection? Because it is kind of going on a bit of a vulnerable journey to
Mm.
work with a coach, because you're going to talk about the deeper stuff, but you're not going to heal the wounds. Okay. So it's not like therapy, as in we talk about your belief, but we don't need to talk about where they come from and why. I mean, we can, but it's not like a must. And it's not like the goal is not to go back in your childhood and heal the wounds that happen, but talk about, okay, now that I'm aware that these beliefs are not serving me in achieving my goal, what else can I do? How else can I practice new behavior that are going to help me change? And that's what you want in a coach. You want them to gear you towards the future, and you want them to be your cheerleader, but also to ask difficult questions for yourself and to be there to challenge you when they hear that your limiting beliefs are responding to the question and
Mm.
not your new self. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
just being able to mirror back. And a lot of coaches will be, I don't know, I'm accredited with the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, because I really believe in the credibility of that institution, because a lot of coaches call themselves, I'm a career coach, but they haven't gone through a proper certification. And make sure they are, if they're not ICF certified, ask them where they have done their certification,
Mm-hmm.
and ask them for the website and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like look it up and just, see if this is kind of a serious goal. If they have done a weekend coaching training, it's probably, you will get what you get, right? Like you can still make progress, but you're probably not going to be transformed after the coaching.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and the real coaching practice is really starting from the premise that the client is resourceful enough. I said that at the beginning, but resourceful enough to find their own solution. So if you have a coach that tells you or advises you on what to do, that's not the right approach. Like, because it's not going to be sustainable if it's somebody else's solution solving your problem.
Right.
So you want, your own accountability also towards making that change. And the coach is supposed to bring you to be accountable for the actions that you agree to take. So yeah, these are the pointers, I would say. But yeah, you need to feel a deep connection with deep connection. I don't know. I saw that it might be a bit too much of a word, but
No, but
like
I
you just,
think you're
you need to,
right.
and it's a click, right? Like, oh
Yes.
yeah, I could
Yeah.
see myself opening up to that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
because if you're not comfortable opening up, you're not going
You're
to
not
move
getting
forward.
anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually very helpful advice. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, good.
Um,
Yeah.
Jen, where can people find you online or in person?
They can't. I'm in Vancouver, so I'm new to Vancouver actually. I just moved from Germany, and so I'm always looking for new connections. So if you're listening to this, you're in Vancouver, you can hit me up for a coffee chat. I always like to meet new people. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. My site is grow-better-together.com. Grow Better Together, and yeah, you can shoot me an email or look at the website or LinkedIn. I'm always available to meet new connections and like-minded people.
That is great. We will put links to all of this in the show notes. We'll also put links, leave a link to Brene Brown's website and everything else that we talked about
Oh, thank
in the
you.
show.
Perfect.
Yes. So all that is because I think the values
Yeah.
exercise would be very helpful to a lot of people. So that's a great place to start. Yes. So thank you so much for being here this week. It was such a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you and
Same. Thanks for having me. And then happy 2024 is about to start,
yeah.
and all of the goals being written down and hopefully achieved by the end of the year.
That's right. That's our goal right now is to get all of you out there listening. We all start the year off with the best of intentions. And then, as I said, it tends to dissipate as the year goes on. But we want to keep you in that feeling of optimism and fresh start and just having, I think, the confidence to
Yeah,
make changes where they need to be made.
hmm,
Because that can be a big step. So,
for
um,
sure.
yes, thank you so much. That is it for us this week. We'll be back again in another 2 weeks with another brand new episode, and we will talk to you all then. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.